Hey everyone, and welcome to This Explainer. Today, we're unpacking a massive shift happening right now in the immigration landscape. We're going to explore exactly why escalating non-immigrant visa denials are pushing highly qualified, super motivated individuals toward an objective, capital-backed path to U.S. residency. It's a fascinating and, pretty expensive evolution, and today we're looking at the hard data behind it.
40%. Seriously, let that number sink in for a second. That is the denial rate B1 and B2 visitor visas are crossing right now for applicants from several high-demand countries. We're talking about places like India, China, Nigeria, and Brazil. This isn't just a slight temporary uptick. It is a massive wall that perfectly qualified individuals are hitting when they try to enter the United States. And as we're going to cover, it's having a profound ripple effect across the entire immigration system.
Section 1. The Visa Refusal Crisis. Why qualified applicants are locked out.
So we're witnessing this massive bottleneck, but why? Well, it's actually not paperwork errors. Perfectly qualified individuals with totally stable finances are getting rejected because of highly subjective discretionary calls by individual consular officers. They're using these really broad assessments of immigrant intent, or just deciding someone has insufficient ties to their home country. The discretion is incredibly wide here, and lately it's been exercised a whole lot more conservatively. Even student visa refusals are up, and H-1B lottery entries, they're leaving an enormous pool of highly skilled professionals completely stranded.
Section 2. The EB-5 Alternative. Certainty through capital.
So, when that door of unpredictable consular discretion slams shut, highly motivated people don't just give up. They look for a statutory alternative. And there's a really stark contrast here. Think about it. Traditional visas are hopelessly bogged down by subjective scrutiny of your immigrant intent. The EB-5, on the other hand, is built on objective, statutory criteria. It's a defined, capital-based pathway. Ultimately, the legitimacy of your funds matters, but a subjective read on your intent does not. It literally changes the entire playing field.
Let's talk about the concrete numbers for a minute. The investment threshold for the EB-5 hinges entirely on location. Funding a project in a standard area requires a minimum of $1,050,000. But if you target a high unemployment zone or a rural area, what's called a targeted employment area, or TEA, that floor actually drops to $800,000.
But listen, the capital alone absolutely does not buy the visa. And that brings us to this absolutely critical number 10. To qualify for the EB-5 program, your investment has to successfully create a minimum of 10 full-time jobs for U.S. workers. This is fundamentally an investment in the U.S. economy. That job creation metric is a strict, non-negotiable requirement for you and your family to become eligible for lawful permanent residence.
Section 3. The New Investor Profile. Shifting Demographics.
Historically, this program had a very specific original base. It was mostly wealthy Chinese families, primarily seeking lifestyle and educational perks for their children in the U.S. Now, that demographic absolutely still exists, but they are no longer the defining majority of the EB-5 ecosystem today.
Just imagine being hopelessly stuck in a 10 to 15-year employment-based green card backlog. For today's new majority, which is largely Indian professionals and business owners, the EB-5 is not just a backup plan. It's a deliberate, calculated escape hatch from a decade of H-1B limbo. Because, let's be honest, waiting 15 years in administrative purgatory isn't exactly the American dream, right?
And what we're seeing is that younger professionals are simply sitting down and running the math. They're weighing the massive upfront cost of an EB-5 against the agonizing ongoing toll of visa uncertainty, endless attorney fees, and sudden career disruptions. And increasingly, they're finding that the certainty of capital actually wins out.
Now, you might be wondering, do these professionals suddenly have to drop everything to start and run a new business themselves? Usually no. Most folks funnel their money into USCIS-designated EB-5 regional centers. These entities pool capital from multiple investors and then deploy it into massive, large-scale projects. We're talking major real estate developments or heavy infrastructure. The regional center steps in and handles the heavy lifting of ensuring those 10 jobs per investor are actually created.
Section 4. Real Risks and Challenges. The Fine Print.
But make no mistake, we are not talking about a magic ticket here. This is an immense financial decision, and your independent due diligence is absolutely essential to avoid losing your capital and your visa. You really have to evaluate 4 critical pillars: the center's track record across past projects, the stability of the underlying sector, the debt-to-equity financial structure, and their historical success at actually creating jobs.
While the 2022 Integrity Act cleaned up the ecosystem with stricter rules, your own independent scrutiny is your only real protection.
Plus, this journey takes a lot of patience. It starts with your initial application, the I-526E petition, which can honestly sit in adjudication for 18 months to several years. Once that's approved, you are granted a conditional green card. Then, roughly 2 years later, comes the final test, filing your I-89 petition. This is your final proof to demonstrate that your investment was sustained and your jobs were actually created, thereby removing the conditions. And remember, depending on where you were born, per-country caps can stretch this timeline out significantly.
Beyond just the timeline, there are some pretty major hurdles. First, your capital must remain entirely at risk. This means there is absolutely no guaranteed return. It's not a savings account. If the project fails, you could lose your money and your pathway to a green card. Second, USCIS requires extremely thorough source of funds documentation. You have to prove every single dollar was lawfully obtained, which honestly can be utterly exhausting if you have complex assets. And finally, immigration policies can and do abruptly shift.
Section 5. Practical Steps to Invest. The Roadmap.
So, if you've weighed these serious risks against the visa refusal crisis and you want to proceed, this highly structured journey begins with Step 1, finding specialized legal counsel. And I don't just mean any immigration lawyer. You need one who exclusively understands investor pathways to properly vet your funds and timeline. Step 2 is the evaluation phase, doing that heavy due diligence on regional center offerings and audited financials. Only after all that do you reach Step 3, committing the capital, filing the initial I-526E, receiving your conditional status, and ultimately filing the final I-829. As we wrap up this explainer, I want to leave you with one critical question to think about. Is the high cost of certainty worth the investment? When you compare a concrete, permanent, criteria-based solution against the rising tide of subjective visa denials and years lost in backlogs, what is the true return on investment for your family's future? It's a really complex choice, but it's one that more people are making every single day. Thanks so much for joining me, and keep questioning the data.